Joining us now, of course, she's one of the greats, of course. You see her on the Longhorn Network and on ESPN as well. She'll be part of the Big 12 coverage on ESPN Plus and the Family Networks with Alex Loeb. I speak of Megan Willis joining us here once again on In the Circle. It's good to talk to you about actual softball, unlike last time we had you on.
Oh my gosh, no kidding. This is what we come for, is talking softball. So I know the last time we talked was so dreary. A much better time.
Yeah, we were both in somber mood as the season had just come to be canceled. They're like, what do we do now? Like type of deal. But this is so exciting. Obviously, you'll be part of this Big 12 tournament. First, talk about this Big 12 tournament. Your thoughts on it. It's unique in that it's a pool play tournament. So just describe it what for those that are be tuning in.
Eric, I'm going to have to pull it up because it is so bizarre, right? I think most people are used to just bracket play. You win, you move on. You lose, you go home, So I think a lot of this has to do with the fact the Big 12 only has 6 teams that participate in the tournament. There are 7 total teams in the softball Big 12. 6 make it, the top 6 make it. And so there's 2 pools. Pool A, which will consist of number 1 seed Oklahoma, number 4 seed Baylor, and number 6 seed Texas Tech. Then you have Pool B, which is your 2, 3, and 5 seeds, which goes Oklahoma State, Texas, Iowa State. Friday's games are Pool A playing each other and then Pool B playing each other. Then whoever comes out on top of each pool, so whoever more than likely wins the 2 games goes 2-0, they will in the championship game on Saturday. And then whoever was second in each pool then plays each other for the 3rd and 4th place games, and so on and so forth. So there are quite a bit of games that happen on on Friday. There are 6 games and then just 3 games on Saturday. Championship is crowned, I believe 3 p.m. Central Time.
4 Eastern, yeah.
Yep, and that will be on ESPN 2.
Look at you breaking it down. Thank you for breaking it down, Eric, because it is a unique format. And they get games in. You get guaranteed games in, and I think the philosophy is that it helps your resume to get guaranteed games and not go 0-2, for example, and things like that. But let's talk about obviously the team that everybody's going to focus on at the top at Oklahoma, winning the regular season title, but pushed by Oklahoma State. Historic offense for the Sooners. What's your thoughts on Patty Gasso in Oklahoma this year?
Well, you know what? I just had a conversation with Coach Gasso this morning, and I was ready to strap on my all my catcher's gear and go out there and play again because, you just listen to her and you understand why her team is so good, why her team is full of people ready to run through the wall for her and for one another. This is a team full of All-Americans. And what I just said to her is, after watching them throughout this year, and then specifically against Oklahoma State, I feel like the way they look, the way they have their presence at the plate, they are the Alabama football of softball. And I don't know that anyone's really going to argue that. I mean, these ladies are so athletic, right? And they just have this look, and that's a little bit different from teams in the past. And they do have a strength and conditioning guy on board that they hired full-time. His name's Dale. He was a graduate assistant. She wanted him full-time, and so he's new with them this year, and I think it's absolutely paid off, on top of the fact that they're just such smart hitters. And you got to go to JT Gasso. He's in his 6th season there, so really implementing his ways as well. And you're just watching this team put up astounding numbers. 120 home runs. Are you kidding me? Like, it's just insane. And it's not just from the upperclassmen. You have the freshman Tiari Jennings that has, I believe, like 22, 23.
Yeah, probably going to win freshman of the year.
And they just keep breeding them there. Yep. Yes. Yes. And you're going to be players of the year. I mean, they're just breeding them there, and I think it has a lot to do with upperclassmen. I think it has everything to do with people that want to transfer there or know they're going to go in and play and maybe not start right away. They know they're going to learn so much, Eric, and it's just insane what they've been able to put together this year.
It really is, and I agree with you about the Nick Saban and Alabama comparison because Coach Gasso's got the Gasso tree. I've talked to her about it in the coaching tree, and people just want to be in that circle, if you will, to learn from her and move on to and be successful elsewhere, as we've seen with Kenny Gajewski as an example at Oklahoma State and others. But even like a Sam Martyrs on their staff this year and things like that. I agree 100%. I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah. Yes. You said it. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's not just players, it's coaching. And what I think is something that was very important that she said, Eric, is, and I know that she's always said this, she said that she likes to make sure her team plays as underdogs. And we're like, well, how in the heck do you do that? You're certainly no underdog this year. And I mean, I tell you what, she's like, well, because I remind them they aren't number one. They aren't number one. You guys are more like a number two team. And maybe that sounds harsh to some people. But to me as an athlete, I love the honesty. And she knows after those games against Oklahoma State this weekend, they weren't playing at their best to win a national championship. And they are going out to win a national championship. So she reminds them, of where they can be better. And she tries to get them to play a little bit like there's always more out there to achieve. And so I think that's a huge piece to her puzzle as to why she's these athletes to play at such a top level.
I agree. What's it been like getting to know her after obviously competing against her, for years when you were a player with Oklahoma, Texas, to now covering her as a broadcaster? I mean, I'll never forget the 2017 regional in Norman. You were a part of that with Alex Slobe and that wild regional where Oklahoma was literally that close to being eliminated by Tulsa and came back and then ended up winning the national title. What's it been like getting to know her?
It's been so enjoyable, Eric. Such a different type of respect I've been able to gain and understand, right? Because it takes a while, I think, as an athlete, specifically against two squads, Texas and OU, we're a huge rivalry and it's just in our blood. And, as a young athlete, it's hard to step out of that to truly understand what coaches do, how they coach, how other coaching philosophies and understanding. But my gosh, it was probably 2012, between 2010 and 2012, I got to understand her outside of being a rival, coach of mine. And that was through the pro league, and a lot of her players started coming to play for the Pride, right? And I started to understand them as players and got to really dive into the coach who she was, and maybe not to just like the rumors that I heard about, or, oh, she's got a coaching book of rules this big, and as an 18-year-old, when you're getting recruited, it's easy stuff to like look at and think that that's so important. And it's not, obviously. And so anyways, I would have to say it would have been after 2010. And again, I graduated in 2000 perspective, but it was 2010-11 that I got to know her. And then as I got to become a commentator, listening to her open up about her squad or open up about her respect for other teams, listening to her, she's invited us into her home. So I've been in her home and see just how she goes about life, and not just coaching women to be great softball players, but to be great and strong women, and no matter what path they decide to choose. So that part's been incredible. And again, whether it's former teammates of mine or players, like listening to Amber Flores, I got to play with her back in 2010, and then listening to Lauren Chamberlain, Kalani Ricketts, Sid Romero. I get to work with Aaron Miller. Just the amount of respect Patty Gasso as amongst our softball world is incredible. And I am just so fortunate that I get to sit in and listen to her talk at times. Because like I said, after those conversations, I'm ready to get back out on the softball field. And there's not a whole lot that would get me to squat behind home plate again.
Tells you what a great motivator she is, man, right? I mean, that's what it says. Let's talk about Oklahoma State, because you saw them in person when they swept Texas, and then I remember when they took the first game, I know, I didn't want to bring, but it happened. But I remember when they beat Oklahoma, you tweeted out that you weren't surprised. You were clearly impressed with what you saw from Kenny Gajewski's team. What impressed you about them seeing him?
Well, here's the deal. Same thing, Eric. You have another coach that just he doesn't demand respect. He earns it. And like listening to him talk again today on a phone call, and I got to talk to him 2 weeks ago. He is so enthusiastic about his team. He has created a culture there of players that will do anything for him. And you see that, and they are a team that are going to buy in right away. I think what was so impressive to me was listening to him talk about Coach Barkfeld, their pitching coach, right? He gets them on staff which is just insane because of what he was able to do with Tulsa. Talk about that 2017 regional, right? That's Coach Barkfeld in Tulsa that's going toe to toe, almost beating Oklahoma. And that's because he is so good with calls an incredible game, and he gets his pitchers to buy in. And I love how Kenny does not have an ego, and he lets his coaching staff run, and he buys into those ideas as well. And because of that, because there's no ego and conflict, I think, between coaching, then the players are going to buy in, right? And so he is definitely a player's coach. He dubbed himself Transfer U, but these players want to be there because of him and what he's established. And so again, what I saw, this is a long-winded answer, but I saw a team that has top 10 pitching, probably top 5 pitching between Eberle and Kelly. And the fact that they're able to go out, and I mean, they were freezing these OU hitters. The first time they saw them, Kelly Maxwell, I saw her, from LO, you're getting big swing and misses as a lefty, and she's throwing, I don't want to say just a curveball because Texas couldn't catch up to it either, but she is so precise in her location on that curveball, both sides of the plate. The off speed looks so good. You had Eberle coming into the weekend with a sub-1 ERA. So you have the pitching, the offense, the top 20 offense as well. I don't know. And Coach Gajewski couldn't get it down to a certain point, but the offense that exploded against OU was even better than what I saw at Texas, right? And they didn't go out and run rule Texas, and Texas was able to put up some runs against them as well. Not as many as maybe they thought they should have, or what the numbers say Texas should have. Because again, Texas, number 3 in the nation in batting average, they can hit. But it was the pitching that shut them down. Against OU, you saw the hitting explode. And I was like, you he talked about what they would do against G. Juarez and Shannon Sale. And, I think what the biggest thing, again, you saw too is grit. I think a lot of people, if they're down 9-1, they're just rolling over, right? They're like, oh, no chance, we're coming back. And that was not the case. And I think that was incredible. I think it's one of those times when you're like, oh man, do we still want to keep the run rule at 8? Right? With how good hitting is these days, is that a conversation we bring up again? But I don't have one singular answer for you. This is Oklahoma State's the real deal. They're for sure a top 10 team, if not a top 8. I think they proved it with the way they were able to go punch for punch with OU 3 games in a row. To put that, in perspective, yeah, Georgia was able to get that win in extra innings, but then what happened in the next game? OU bounces back and run rules them. That did not happen to Oklahoma State. And so Oklahoma State, and tell you what, for both of those squads, what a great 3-game series to have before postseason, because both of them learned what they needed to fix and sharpen up to get through the postseason. That's for sure.
I agree, and I talked to him obviously in his media session. He agrees with that. That's why he liked the 3-game series in Stillwater. He thinks it gets him ready for postseason. Do you think they should be in the conversation as a national title contender? You know, UCLA, Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida, Washington usually always get brought up when the national title word gets brought up, but nobody brings up Oklahoma State. But yet, here they go. They were toe-to-toe with Oklahoma. Should they be, can be in the conversation, or maybe as a sleeper team that people should talk about and take more seriously as far as not only getting to Oklahoma City, but be in the picture there in the mix?
Yeah, I think so. I think you get yourself to the World Series, Eric, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen after that point. And especially early in the tournament when you're not playing the 3-game series. Then you get yourself to that championship series when it is a 3-game series. My gosh, that's when the coaching comes out. That's when the depth comes out. That's where you're going to see the importance of a 1-2 punch. And that is something Oklahoma State definitely has. They have 2 very good pitchers to take them far, and so that's kind of where I think they have one up, at least in a top 4 discussion. I think UCLA has that depth. OU has the depth, but then, we kind of saw a little bit of a falter this weekend between Juarez. I think it was more on G's shoulder, and great game too. Just Oklahoma State made that adjustment, so they luckily for them, they had a 3rd pitcher to go to. So that shows you the depth for Oklahoma. But yeah, I think Oklahoma State, they get themselves to the World Series. They're gritty. They are so gritty and tough that I think they'll make a splash. Yes.
And I think it's important for them too. I mean, I've talked to Mike White about this with the Big 12 is to get that national respect is getting 2-3 teams to the World Series every year like the SEC and the Pac-12 does. He feels this is the strongest from a depth standpoint that the Big 12 has been. Kenny Gajewski and Patty Gasso has agreed with that statement. Do you feel that way about the Big 12, that this is the deepest it's ever been since you've covered it?
Oh, absolutely. And you go into some of the new hires that have been around as well, too, right? You have to go into that. You have, of course, the OU, Oklahoma State, Texas, Baylor. That's just so unfortunate. I think there's been a lot of outside of softball hurdles for this team to go over. But what Coach Moore has consistently done with Baylor, another top team. But then you have what Pinkerton's been able to do up in Iowa State, and what he's done with that offense has just been incredible. But I like that new hire. You have Jen McFalls, the new hire at Kansas. Not probably the year or the numbers she wanted, but again, it's new, and you're watching these teams compete at different levels, and it's absolutely. And I don't know. I mean, another new hire at Texas Tech as well.
Sammy Ward, Texas Tech there.
Sammy Ward, Sammy and Randy Ward moved in there too. Mm-hmm. So I like what's happening in the Big 12. I admit that I think it absolutely it started with Oklahoma and what Coach Gass has done over the past decade, and then with Texas making the hire of Coach White, there is a stance and there's a push there in the Big 12, and it's so good to see. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Mike White, good segue. So you know how this podcast stuff works. You're a pro. Texas, by other team standards, great year. They're going to probably host again, top 3 in a strong conference, top 25 team. But it is Texas. You know this well. You wear those colors, and all people focus on is, well, they got 0-3 against Oklahoma and 0-3 against Oklahoma State. Your thoughts on the Longhorns this year? I thought this was a challenging year for Coach White. Losing Miranda Ellis before the year, she opted out of the year. Kind of had to make some adjustments of pitching. He even admitted he didn't think they pitched as well as he thought they could for most of the season they're capable of. Your thoughts on the Longhorns here and what they need to do this week to be successful against those 2 teams in Oklahoma?
Well, you brought it up. I think there's no doubt they missed the arm in the circle of Miranda Ellis. And I think the team itself in the chemistry, they probably wouldn't say it. They wouldn't make it. I think they've done a tremendous job moving forward from it. I think we as outsiders looking in, you just look at the numbers and you look at the presence on the field. So I think it's just taken an entire season for the Texas pitching staff to find its identity. I think we all, and it's always about confidence, right? Everything boils down to that. But for me, I thought it would be a really easy fill-in with Shea O'Leary. Shea O'Leary can top out around 68, 70 miles an hour, and then the addition of Molly Jacobson, the lefty, spinner. But for some reason, just couldn't get consistent starts out of either one of them. And then you're toying around with a few new arms in the circle, and it's always an interesting mix, like when is too much innings, right? Like, okay, we've given you your chance, we need to get the W's. So I think for pitching standpoints, that is something that they were just trying to figure out. Baylor's series was different, Eric. I think I don't know how to pinpoint it, but Shea O'Leary, game one, it's in Austin. I mean, that's the Shaylin O'Leary we saw last year at times, and I don't know if it's the own pressure she puts on herself. Maybe she felt like there wasn't as much pressure last year because there was an Ellis. It almost felt like she finally took the reins and said, this is my team, and I'm going to go out and do it. Maybe year player, or back in 2019, she threw a perfect game against Baylor, so feeling that extra confidence going out there. But I tell you what, that's what gives the Texas fans hope. That's what makes us as media say, why is Texas not performing where they should be? Because we've seen the bright spots out of some of these players that maybe we're not seeing as consistent this year. So for Baylor, unfortunately for Baylor, they got a different Texas than Oklahoma State saw, I think. And some of that might have to do with right before Friday's game, earlier in the week, the athletes found out Jake Ellinger had passed away, who is Sam Ellinger, and he's their age, right there. I think he's 20 years old at the time, and so I don't know about you, but I feel like whenever there's something else on the line to maybe get these athletes to think about something other than softball, or the game isn't as big as life, right? Like they all played with a different energy. And it being senior day, you have a lot of people making their decisions to move forward. But whatever it was, Eric, it was a different team. And I hope as an alumni, and I hope as just a softball fan, that's the Texas that is ready to move forward, because that's the Texas we all see, right? You saw Mariah Copo go yard, both her and Shannon Rhodes, 15 home runs. I mean, they were putting up numbers against a great pitcher in Gia Rodoni. And I don't know that we can put a pinpoint on it, but if that's the Texas that can stay true, I think they're going to go in and get to play the underdog and shock some people.
I think that's a great point. When you're, and I've seen that up close with players and teams, they get up for certain games because, hey, the pressure's on, we don't have no pressure. This is what we look forward to. And sometimes they put too much pressure on yourself. I can't imagine if you're O'Leary, you were the number 2 behind Ellis, and all of a sudden you feel like you got to be the number 1, and maybe you put too much pressure. As you were a catcher. I wonder if you've seen that up close, either from a playing days or broadcasting, where a pitcher's roles does make a difference. It's one thing to be behind Cat Osterman, let's say, as a number 2 pitcher, but then if Cat moves on and you move up to the number 1, there's like, oh, I'm following Cat. And even though mentally it's more of a mental thing than a physical thing, clearly.
Yep, exactly. It's all mental.
So Texas, but hey, they could peak right now. Is the right time to peak. And maybe sometimes as a team, do you need that kind of a, the Oklahoma State series to happen and kind of be a wake-up call? And maybe, like you said, this is a different Texas team moving forward. It could be a turning point.
Yeah, I think if anything, that's how you have to take it, right? The season's not over. This is a great way to spin it into a positive. Uh, in the same breath, it's the same thing Oklahoma is going to use with that loss against Oklahoma State. You know, they all are going to feed off of what we can be better at right now. And at least for Texas, after, you know, two very hard series against an OU and an Oklahoma State where you're probably feeling very defeated, getting those 3 wins and sweeping Baylor is exactly what they needed heading into postseason, for sure.
No doubt about that. Let's talk about Iowa State. Maybe the surprise, Jamie Pinkerton. Iowa State looks like they're on the verge of going to make the NCAA tournament. They have a great player, Sammy Williams, who has been a phenomenal player throughout her career in the Big 12. What makes her such a great player and has really helped, you know, bring up Iowa State softball?
You know, I think it just has a lot to do with buying into Pinkerton's hitting philosophy and what he's been able to do there as well. And I think, you know, the fact that it takes a couple years to get your philosophy to settle in. And you love the fact that at least when you got there, you were able to get an athlete like a Sammy Williams, right, who's going to be a leader for this team. But how big for him, the program, they earned their first ever ranking in the NFCA top 25 coaches poll this year. And the fact that they were able to break that, I think just goes and shows, again, what this team is capable of. I think they were in the 30s in an RPI, which is, again, the top RPI in program history. The fact in his 40s and now he's already got 100 wins. I mean, I just think everything that he's been able to implement is coming into fruition, and it just takes time. But it's been really fun to watch.
It really does take time, and he deserves it. I mean, they've beaten Ole Miss, I believe. They've beaten Missouri non-conference. They've, you know, certainly done a great job there. And then this league, obviously, Kansas, even Kansas, I know they kind of faded at the end, but they beat Missouri. They've beaten Wichita State, beat Oklahoma State. So I think McFalls is kind of getting Kansas in the right direction there from a competition. And then Texas Tech, Sammy Warden's in her first year, Aaron Edmondson. Do you see a day where the Big 12 gets everybody into the NCAA tournament, kind of like what the SEC has been doing the last couple of years and the Pac-12 used to do back in the day?
I mean, I want to say yes. I think there's still some growing pains to work through.
Sure.
Maybe not in the next. I think the more exposure like the Oklahoma State has brought to Oklahoma right now, people don't just want to go and play for OU. There is a difference in coaching style and programs there, but both have a strong want to play there. And now you just got to figure out a way to get that kind of excitement to places like Lubbock and in Kansas as well. So I think it's possible. I think you look at Iowa State. I think what a great school to use for comparison and what Pinkerton's been able to do.
Yes, absolutely. 100% agree on that. Last couple things. How's the broadcasting this year was for you, being back, broadcasting the unique circumstances, and your old putty there, your cat also getting into broadcasting, doing games on ESPN Plus. What has that been like for you, broadcasting and her broadcasting?
Well, first and foremost, like, thank goodness the season happened, right? I mean, without the season being able to happen, none of us, again, are getting to do what we love for a living, and that's talk about softball. For me specifically, has to probably do a lot with the state that we're in, living in Texas. We were able to be open, and whether it was Alex and I or Tyler and I, we got to call the games at the stadium. We are the only, at least in the linear networks, we are the only folks able to broadcast live at the games. And that's because of just the way our press box situated. I would be in my own room and play-by-play in a stand there. They were able to put some plexiglass, but just so unbelievable that we're able to do that and be live at the game. And then on top of the fact with knowing so many other sports are finishing their seasons or they got pushed back. I mean, heck, we were watching volleyball championships a month ago and they're usually in December. You know, you've got soccer, you got lacrosse, you got so much other going on. And yet here we are on the softball side still getting to stream all of these games, which then brings me to the fact that, yeah, you got to see or listen to Kat commentate on ESPN Plus, and in the amount of, I guess, just respect that ESPN is giving our sport is incredible. And to see how many games are still getting put online and on air, knowing all of these other sports are having their championships at the same time.
Do you critique her broadcast like you did as a player when you would and her playing and her mechanics, or what's been your thoughts when you see her broadcast? You critique her there?
You know, Eric, full disclosure, I haven't had a chance to listen to it. It's tough, you know, sometimes, and I forget I can go back and listen, but I need to go back and listen because I know after softball, that's something that she's going to want to get into a little bit more. But this year has been fun. Not only her, Natasha Watley's getting a lot more reps over there at the Pac-12 network games and calling for her Bruin. Of course, you know how Fran and I are besties, and she's getting so many reps, not just with SEC Plus in Florida, but I know she was down there in your neck of the woods. Well,
working with me.
Too. She lives in Orlando.
Yeah, working with me.
Yeah, you know, and I did. That just shows you how many opportunities there still are out there and how many games are just getting pushed on streaming and on ESPN Plus. It's just, it's awesome.
My request
and
is.
If we have,
my only request is getting you and.
If we have more hours in the day, then I want to go listen to them.
All right, but I want you and Kat in the booth. I want you and the Kat in the booth, same booth for a game at some point.
I think we should. Well, you know what? We have done some for the Longhorn Network back in the day. I'm sure maybe we'll see some in the future.
Okay, you guys can you coexist in the same booth, or is that like you're gonna be competing for like each word?
No, I think we would get on the same page. I would definitely let her take over the pitching conversation.
That's a good idea. It's probably a good idea. All right, last thing. What's going to be the keys this week for the Big 12 tournament for whoever wins the Big 12 championship? What's going to be the key?
Making adjustments. Who gets to make them the quickest? You know, I think most people are going to assume it's going to be OU and OS. And played each other, so there's really no secrets left on the board. So again, I think it's going to be about playing clean defense. I've seen that, you know, from all of these teams. The ones that are making errors and giving the extra opportunities are the ones getting the L's. I think Oklahoma State saw that against OU, right, when they weren't playing clean defense and they gave up a couple free passes. Again, gee whiz, too many free passes on their loss to Oklahoma State. And for Texas, same thing. If they can get through a game with clean defense, then they're going to give themselves a shot for sure.
Well, it's going to be exciting. Big 12 tournament going on, ESPN Plus, ESPN2 championship game on Saturday. Megan Willis will be a part of the coverage alongside Alex Loeb, one of the great favorite combos. Hope the postseason, Willis and Loeb. It has to happen. Now we know we're getting closer to normal there. Megan, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know from the busy schedule there, always enjoy having you on. Enjoy the Big 12 tournament and the postseason, and create drama like you and Alex always do. Every time you two do games, it seems to be dramatic. So let's hope for more of those.
Yes, bring on the drama. We're here for it. Thanks so much, Eric.